got, yeah. Can you hear me? All right. Thanks for being here. Over the last days, what I have heard the most was person-centered care, quality of care, and that seems to be a topic that goes all across Europe, obviously. That is why we are in this business. At the end of the day, quality of care depends on one thing solely, and that is face-to-face time between caregivers and residents or receivers of care. What I would like to talk about is the challenge that we're facing throughout Europe due to the demographic development. Come 2020, there will be approximately 30% more elderly people in what in the UK is known as the high dependency rate. And there will, in the UK, be a lack of caregivers because they will get older and retire too. And I will walk you through what we have done in Denmark. For once, politicians being politicians, for once they actually took preemptive strides and made intervention studies before the problem hit us. So that has now become known as from 2 to 1 carer. And I would like to go through that and see whether that could be relevant for elderly people and for you in the care community in the UK. The challenge, we have a strong growth in the number of citizens in need of care. If we look a little bit, this is outdated, should be the EU 26 plus North America by now. 850 million people growing to 900 and 894. That is a growth of 44 million, 38 million of whom are likely to be pensioners. If we look at the very high dependency, quite interestingly, across cultures and across countries, if you take approximately 2.2% of the population that is 65 plus, they will be in the very high dependency rate. And what we're looking at here, if we take that number, is a growth of about 830,000 people. Now, for that many countries, that probably doesn't sound that radical, but these are the weakest of the weak. If we look at the United Kingdom, predictions are that population will grow by approximately 5 million. And if I'm not wrong, 3.4 of them will be pensioners. Very interestingly, you're looking at about 30% plus increase in the number of very high dependency people. The very weak elderly are estimated across countries to account for approximately 50% of caregiver time in the nursing home environment. And the single area that this study focuses on, which is lifting, transfer, and hygiene, accounts for approximately 25 to 35% of caregiver time. So this is highly labor intensive. It is also an area that is very personal, and the quality of the care given in those situations, which can be very intimate, toileting, is obviously very important for the perceived quality of care. Now, if we look at the UK, it's predicted that 25% of your caregivers will retire by 2020. So we have a plus 30% meeting a minus 25. That means that unless we do something now to prepare for that situation, we are going to have very, very dire straits. And interestingly, this, as I will go on to talk about, is very much a change of culture. But in order to change your culture, you need to have time. And if you wait for too long, you're going to be so stressed that you will simply not have time to carry out any changes. So basically, where you should be starting is yesterday. Lifting, transfer, and hygiene again. The Danish state looked at different areas and said, where do we have a lot of time being spent? So where is it logical to go in and find more clever ways of working? Pan-European wise, it is estimated that this process costs a staggering £67 billion a year in salaries. These are numbers that just go beyond any kind of comprehension, but it is, again, critical to the quality of care that these routines are handled correctly. So, a local area to search for more smart ways of working. There is an urgent need to invest massively in welfare technology, which, one, requires less time and fewer carers. It's logical. More importantly, it should also reduce the number of work injuries. In a situation where a lot of people are retiring, we can simply not live with a situation where it is twice as dangerous to work as a caregiver as it is to work in construction. Let's forget all the human suffering, but just from a logistics point of view, something has got to happen. Very importantly, we have got to stop thinking in terms of cost and start thinking in terms of total cost of care. And this is a very, very critical point. The purchase price of a given technical aid is very, very small compared to the cost that goes along with maintenance and service, more importantly, personnel costs and sick leave and injuries. Now, we define that as total cost of care, and we should look at that over the lifespan of the product. There's been a tendency, at least in our neck of the woods, for people to think very much that they had an annual budget and this is what we spent. So we also spread it out to get enough pieces of hardware to go around, rather than looking at it as what are the consequences of the investments we are making. From 2 to 1, Carers, a state-sponsored Danish intervention study. It's quite interestingly, the study chose 310 very high dependency residents, and they equipped them with ceiling track systems and with elevating shower commode chairs with tilt and space function. And then the next thing that is critically important, and I will come back to that again and again and again, the carers were trained intensively and the work procedures were completely redefined. The results, I would say, speak for themselves. In 75% of the cases where it was previously necessary to work with 2 caregivers, they were capable of going down to 1 person. In a small country like Denmark, that was equivalent to nearly 860 full-time employees being freed up to either do other things, or you could do a cost-saving exercise if that was what you wanted. In the UK, the potential has been calculated to between 9,700 and 11,000 carers in full-time equivalents. And we're talking sums of about 150 to 180 million pounds a year. So this is really, really big money. What is very interesting is that by now this has become mandatory in Denmark. By the end of 2017, all municipalities must have gone from 2 to 1. And interestingly, we're seeing in some of the cities where it has been implemented that sick leave due to lower back pain has decreased by as much as 73%. So the message that I will try to get across during this speak is that this is not, we gain some on the economics and we gain some on time, but we pay on quality of care. As a matter of fact, the results that come out have shown the opposite. Perceived quality of care has increased significantly, both amongst residents and amongst caregivers. And there will be some statements later on, but basically, I remember from my time working as a caregiver, and that probably hasn't happened in the UK, but in a Monday morning, we would be talking over the back of the guy sitting in the shower commode chair about, have you had a nice weekend, and by the way, and some of them, you know, they felt like they were a car in a garage being serviced. Whereas another thing that is very important, I don't know whether you can imagine going to the toilet with 2 strangers present. I mean, that gets very, very close to your intimate sphere and something I'd rather avoid. So what we're hearing out there, and I'll get back to that, is that the residents tend to say, now we're 1-on-1 instead of 2 against 1. The caregivers, and I'll come back to that again, feel empowered. Now, this is not just a hunky-dory story where everything works and everything has been spick and span. It takes a lot to get there. There are bumps on the way, but if you do things correctly, you do get there. Choice of care strategy. Quite interestingly, when I've been speaking to organizations in Denmark, and for your information, nearly all nursing homes in Denmark are publicly run, and the decision-making processes are public. And I have asked people, sort of out of the room, how long should a good technical aid last you guys? Well, 8 to 10 years will be the typical answer. And I've then said to them, do we agree that any technical aid by design has a certain staff requirement? And everyone says, yes, that's obvious. And then I say to them, can we then also agree that every time your occupational therapist is out buying equipment. She's making decisions for the personnel for the next 10 years, and there's just this white film going over their eyes. They've never made the connotation. And very often, and this is not to say that occupational therapists are bad persons, not at all. But in the Danish system, they have given a budget, and that is what they have to spend. So their incentive is to stretch the money as far as possible in terms of investment costs, and not look at what are the costs associated with the choices I make. So the way we see it, hang on, sorry. Does it work? Yeah. Choice of care strategy is a strategic decision, and it should be made at top management level. This is not something we should leave to people, in inverted commas, on the floor. I'll give you a good example here. If we go for the cheapest solution within lifting, transfer, and hygiene, the apparently cheapest solution over the lifespan actually comes out at about £41,000, £42,000 more expensive. The situation we're talking about, again, is from I wake up in bed, how do I get out of bed, how do I get onto the toilet, how do I get my teeth brushed, how do I get showered, how do I get shaved, how do I get dressed. Pretty much the process you and I go through from we wake up till we slam the door and walk out. The traditional way of doing that would be a traditional shower and commode chair and a mobile lifter. The purchase price here, for example, £1,670. 2 persons required, 2 hours per day, hourly wages of just about £8. So over 8 years, we're looking at £92,000 in total cost of care as we define it. If we take the expensive solution of buying a ceiling track system and an elevating care chair, in 3 out of 4 cases, we can go from 2 to 1. 2 hours per day, same wages, same calculation. The savings that come out after 8 years is actually £46,500. And if we turn that around again, that is equivalent that every installation will free up 2.6 man-years. So the business case in this way of working is compelling. It is what you can say is pretty much a no-brainer. The big question is it too good to be true? Better quality and lower cost. As I said, sort of briefly, actually the perceived quality of care has gone markedly up. As I said, going from 2 to 1, or 2 against 1 to 1-on-1 means complete focus and a lot more intimate care situation. And very importantly also, what we see is there tends to be a lot more eye contact. There tends to be discussing about your problems. You, as the resident, become the center of attention. What we see is both residents and caregivers actually say that they have a much more calm and less stress situation. They're one-on-one. Very importantly, and I remember when I worked as a caregiver, I would find myself waiting for somebody else to come around. I couldn't just go in and do what I had to do. And, you know, she was off doing something else. All of a sudden, that is gone. But more importantly, they're just the two of us. And we're the two of us in all of these very intimate situations, which just gives sort of oil on the water. It goes down in speed and everything becomes less stressed. Very importantly, the carers feel empowered. They can service their residents when they want to on their own. They do not have to wait for a colleague, as I said. Very importantly, they feel empowered. They have been trained in and given the power to make a decision each and every time we go into a working situation, whether one carer is really enough or should we be two. Now, what happens very often is that residents in the high dependency category will fluctuate in their readiness or awareness. And it's perfectly necessary for this to work that this is not a regimen that is described by a physiotherapist that with John we always do like this. No, what we do is we go out and we train and we train and we train and we empower the individual person on the floor to say, this is my decision, today we're okay, we're good to go, the two of us. No, I will have to bring somebody in because John is too tired. And for a lot of caregivers, empowerment is a completely new feeling. At least in Denmark, a lot of projects and change projects have been sort of attempted and they haven't really come to fruition. And very often they have felt that things have been dragged from the top over their heads and they haven't had influence. So that becomes, instead of inspiring, it becomes like, not another project, please stay off. So, and this is what I'm coming back to. The critical thing about this is the training and how you implement it and how you get everybody on board. Because if you don't do it. Please don't, because you're not going to get anything but grief. Nursing home directors consistently report that both the physical and the psychological work environment has increased. Yesterday there was a speaker saying that in residential care or nursing home care in the UK, you have annual staff turnover rates of about 19%, and in home care about 30%. That seems pretty much at par with what we see everywhere else. If we take one municipality in Denmark, they have had in their 42 nursing homes, one person resigning in the last 18 months. It has completely changed their culture. And what is very interesting with this is if you do it right, it becomes an animal, a vehicle for change. And the first time you get people to perceive that it actually works, they will be open for the next process that you propose. Or very importantly, as we're also seeing, they are beginning to propose what could be done and what could be improved. So this empowerment actually can bring about a change of culture, which is not unimportant because, face it, at the end of the day, it's the people on the floor who knows what they're dealing with, not us, okay? Change management, and I'm here representing a group of which Ergolet is a part. Conventional wisdom has it when lifting a need is two carers must be present. I know that that is the case in a lot of countries. We have not been able to find anywhere laws defining that this is necessary. In most legislation will say that there must be a sufficient number of caregivers. In the UK, I know that the insurance companies very often dictate that you must have two caregivers present. So if you're going to work with this, and I'll come back to that again, you need to involve all the parties, that be insurance companies, whatever, all the way through the process in order to actually succeed. This fact of being two is so strongly embedded that what this is all about is change management. And successfully going from 2 to 1 requires training, and training. At Ergolet, we had an implementation in a city where we had 42 nursing homes and 1,800 caregivers whom we trained over a period of 12 months. So this just goes to show this is not something you do in an afternoon. It also gives you a lot of experience. We've done, we've supplied, 30, 40 municipalities in this process. And one of the things is we find that training must go on in uniform and on the job, not in a classroom setting. Classroom settings just do not mirror the real world. You have to be there, you have to have your colleagues there, you have to exchange information and ideas. One thing that is critically important is you must tailor-make the education program to match the culture of each and every nursing home, and you must involve the staff at every level from top management to the people on the floor. What you're doing here, it may sound banal, but you're actually approaching something where you're changing their world, you're turning it upside down. There are a lot of perceived risks for individuals in this process, and unless you fail to involve them in the process, you will alienate them. The first reaction we got all over Denmark when this was proposed was the unions automatically saying this is a cost-cutting exercise. We don't want to do it, this is hopeless, forget it, we don't want to be a part of it. And interestingly, today the unions are the primary champs for this because they've seen the stress levels go down, they've seen employee satisfaction go up, and they've seen injuries go down. So it is very important to go in and match it, but there will not be one size fits all. You cannot go out and buy a standard course that will do this. You must go in and match the culture of the individual nursing home. Again, involve relatives, interest groups, unions, politicians, insurance company. Make them understand that your goal here is to prepare for the future and guarantee a safe work environment and a high quality of care. This is not about saving a quid or two. Because unless you get that communicated, you're going to start off on a negative note. That being said, there will still be people who are very skeptical, okay? It's all about quality of care and good work environment, as I said. A model for change management, what we have found is that very often there's a black box out there that we don't really know how long, yeah, go ahead. How long time do the processes take? So we work very much with a wheel of consistent improvement where we go out and do situation analysis, go through what are the options, go through what are the implementation plans, and then help going back to a new starting point where hopefully you will have a continuous improvement circle. There are many models for doing this. This is just our way of doing it. We have also found that when I used to work as a carer, we used to have algorithms that were extremely complicated. And I was standing there and I go, I don't understand this, and I'd just chop it over my shoulder and do what I'd always done. So we've had some very clever girls develop some algorithms that are dead simple, but which will actually allow you to go in every day and evaluate, John, say, is this a one-person or a two-person job? And it works, which is the critical thing. Will it work in the UK? Yes. In spite of cultural differences, high-dependency residents tend to have the same needs. So yes, it will. Adapt the process to match the British culture in general and the beliefs and traditions of the individual institution in particular. Extremely important. Education, education, education. And without being pop smart, if you think education is expensive, try ignorance. That's really, really expensive. If you haven't got the stomach for doing the education bit and the money to do it, please don't start. On the other hand, I heard from one of the lecturers yesterday that the British system is actually such that if you structure things correctly, you can get a lot of refunds for education. So there you have an advantage which we do not have in the Scandinavian countries. Involve all levels of staff in the organization and you will succeed. We recommend trying with a small intervention study, 30 to 40 installations, go in, have an external consultant do pre-studies, pre-measurements, implementation, post-measurements, and then you can do a business case that will actually say, does this work in our culture, yes or no? And this is not rocket science. It's very, very simple. At Ergolet, we are willing to assume some of the project risks should we not obtain the desired results. And the reason why we dare to say this is that we've been there and we've seen that it actually works. Obviously, we'll happily give you access to the people in Denmark who have made this. But I think rather than me standing here and talking about this, why not get somebody who's actually been through the process, say what they state on it. Afterwards, if you have questions, you're very welcome. If not, you can go to our booth, which is, I think, M20. But this is from a city in Denmark called Aarhus, which is the second largest city. And they have been working with From 2 to 1 for about 4.5, 5 years.
Aarhus is Denmark's second largest city and is forward-thinking within a number of areas. The caregiving policies of the city of Aarhus are intended to support its citizens having secure and dignified lives. Aarhus also desires to be a leader in the use of welfare technology. All of the city's nursing homes are equipped with overhead lifts and other modern care equipment. The city of Aarhus gives priority to its work with welfare technology. A grant has been given to install welfare technology in 500 nursing homes. Not 3, but 500. It's technology that promotes self-reliance. It's technology that involves being moved as easily as possible. It's overhead lifts. It's toilets with integrated wash and dry facilities. It's smart house technology. Collectively, these technologies make daily life easier both for the citizens as well as for employees who are in charge of creating a good quality of daily life for them. This makes for a better quality of life for citizens. Plus, when welfare technology has been installed and put into use in nursing homes, it has a positive effect on both the physical as well as the psychological working environment of the employees. Welfare technology, such as ceiling lifts and height-adjustable care chairs, combined with thorough personnel training, can make it possible for the care of 3 out of every 4 citizens to be performed by 1 carer instead of 2. Increased quality of life and dignity for the residents. Better contact between resident and caregivers. Better working environment and working positions. Increased efficiency and substantial cost savings. Things go much better with this new technology. A remote control in one hand while I'm supporting the citizen with the other, and the citizen is moved in a very smooth manner. It takes less time, and we complete the task properly. And the citizen is happy. We're happy. We have closeness, good contact. In addition, it's possible for only one caregiver to handle the work. This makes the entire system more flexible. At the same time, this reinforces the quality of life and closeness between caregiver and citizen, who engage in a closer dialogue. Now, I will lift you up so you can see yourself in the mirror. That we can elevate the rise chair means that we can create close contact with the citizen, and this provides a completely different positive atmosphere, where people can look each other in the eye while care is given. During rehabilitation, it's also possible to have single-handed care. The Ergo Trainer optimizes training, saving time and resources. The Ergo Trainer is a useful supplement to the other training we do with the citizens. We use body weight supporting walking training. Here, citizens have the opportunity to walk longer because they are supported, and the citizen feels secure. The therapist can focus on the quality of care and not on supporting the citizen. The Ergo Trainer is easy to use. The therapist can quickly prepare the citizen, and it's simple to get up into. It can be used for many types of medical conditions, and those who must be supported in terms of their body weight are able to walk longer here. It's important to focus on the physical working environment of the caregivers, so I recommend putting your hands behind your back when transferring. It's important that we let technology do the heavy work, so we don't strain anything or do heavy lifting. At the same time, it's also important that we work with the rehabilitative mindset, where the citizens do as much as they can themselves and maintain their physical capabilities. This also gives them an extra bonus, reinforcing indeed that they are capable of doing tasks. We work a lot with the implementation of the technology. It's just as with other large investments in technology. If you don't use it correctly, then it's not useful. To use it, a proverbial driving license is required, which requires knowledge about how you use it. So we also have a large training program for our employees, involving welfare technology and the best possible use of welfare technology. From 2 to 1 caregiver. New caregiving procedures involving moving, lifting, and hygiene can, in 75% of all cases, mean that the tasks can be handled by 1 employee instead of 2.
All right. We have to round up pretty quickly. So if there are 1 or 2 questions, let's do them here. Otherwise, you're more than welcome at the booth of Ergolet. Any questions or comments? No?
Thank you, Henrik. I think
Doesn't seem to be the case. Fantastic.
Henrik's here, so if you would like to come, but there's also the stand is where?
L20.
L20, so if you'd like to, during the lunchtime or this afternoon, go and have a word. I thought that was very thought-provoking, looking at something that we might all have assumed was just a given, and how actually it could be done in a slightly different way. Very well worth thinking about. I'd like to thank Ergolet for sponsoring this session, thank Henrik for his very enlightening talk, and thank you for coming. Could you take your goods and chattels with you and leave the place tidy? Could you do the feedback forms? That would be really helpful if you could do that. And could you enjoy your lunch? And before you go, I think just an appreciation for Henrik's contribution. Thank you.